Buongiorno. Joseph Kursky here with you to talk about some of the main tools and maps and data that I use to study countries, to encourage teaching and learning about countries using web-based geographic information systems, or GIS. The first tool that I make heavy use of is the ArcGIS 3D Scene Viewer from Esri. As you can see here, you can, at any scale, examine multiple facets of a country, the physical geography, the cultural geography. There's a measure tool and some other tools on here that you can make effective use of to measure distances, line distances, and also area and perimeter distances, as I'm doing here. We're going to focus on Italy today, Italia, and I can see how long it is approximately. It depends on where I put the mouse or cursor down of any country or region of the world, or rivers for that matter, or length and width of cities, islands, volcanoes, lots of things you can measure with these interactive mapping tools. Let's just measure Sardinia right now. Excellent. Let's change the base map. That's another easy to do thing, so we can look at the influence of urbanization, agriculture, and landforms such as volcanoes, mountain valleys. We're going to zoom into one of these valleys right here in northern Italy and rotate around and look at the settlement of that valley, the land use in different parts, look at maybe flood potential from that river running down through the middle of that valley, any flood protection control measures that might be operating in there as well. And you can see here on the right side that you've got a lot of different base maps at your fingertips. One of my favorite fun and interesting ones is the colored pencil map. You get this wonderful font and color scheme. And remember, this is ArcGIS Online, so you can actually customize your own base map. Now we're going to dip into ArcGIS 2D Viewer. It's the map viewer. I'm looking at anthropomorphic biomes of the world, WWF priority ecoregions and why they're priority for the WWF, and look at some other ecoregions as well as biomes. Just in ArcGIS Online, notice in the upper right, I'm not signed into anything. This is just operating in a web browser, and I can see the different temperate domains here, the Mediterranean regime and the crops, the animals, the plants, and other things in that area that would be supported by such biomes and ecoregions. And of course, you've got a scale bar there, and you've got a legend, and different ecoregions produced from different agencies will get you some different results. But this is one of the standard things that I do, is actually pull up ecoregions and biomes and look at things like annual precipitation and a whole lot of other things. There's thousands of layers at your fingertips in ArcGIS Online, many of which are housed in the Living Atlas of the World that we'll talk about in a bit. The Water Balance app is another app that I particularly love because, again, it's functional. It's getting data from the Internet of Things. You can scroll to different months of the year and see the different precipitation, soil moisture, evapotranspiration, snowpack, and other things that we'll take a brief look at here, looking at parts of Italy and seeing the different temperature regimes and precipitation in this case, and looking at just over the course of a few years. And it's just wonderful to have these data sets at your fingertips. You can see the more recent higher rainfall since 4 years ago, according to this data set. You can also export this into other packages. Here's the snowpack. So northern Italy, as expected, you've got some snowpack there. Southern Italy, none. There's also a map in the Esri Cool Maps gallery that has to do with migration, incoming and outgoing migration for different areas of the world. And so obviously, since our theme is Italy, we're going to start with Italy and look at inbound and outbound. So you've got 4 different time periods here according to the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And you can see how the migration incoming to Italy and outgoing from Italy to other countries changes over time and, of course, over space. Since we've got a 3D map here, we can also switch to a 2D map view, as we'll do in a moment with these tools on the left side of the map, that you can see the migrants outbound from Italy to different countries. So again, using geographic information systems is all about what's where, why is it there, and why should we care. So that's one of the reasons why I love this particular mapping application. Now we're going to switch to the Wayback Imagery App. And the Wayback Imagery is another fascinating tool because you can, as the name implies, go back in time looking at high-resolution satellite imagery for different areas. So here we've got a coastal area in Venice, and looking at the construction of the docks and the facility to take cargo from ships. So we've got the left side image and the right side image. Here's an area in Florence where you wouldn't think a historical city like that is changing that much, but you can, if you do some investigation, which I encourage you to do with students, you can see things changing, not only in the cultural environment, but in the physical environment as well, based on landslides, rock slides, volcanic eruptions, etc. Now we're going to go to another kind of layer in ArcGIS Online. Now we're looking at average household size, and why does that vary between regions of a country? And why do we care about household size or median age or median income or any other demographic variables? These are things that you can pull up easily because this is all tied to a geographic information system. So you've got the map part, which is the G part of GIS, and you've got the I part, which is a table of data. In this case, purchasing power now we're looking at, and as expected, there are certain areas of Italy that are higher and certain areas that are lower. The urban areas near Milan and Roma being a little bit higher than some of the more remote rural areas as expected. But sometimes maps show you things that you don't expect, and that's one of the reasons why I love mapping and spatial analysis. And you can also filter, since you've got this in a geographic information system, ArcGIS Online, you can filter saying, I only want to look at neighborhoods or regions that are above a certain threshold in terms of income or median age or any other variable. You've got hundreds of variables at your fingertips here, again, in ArcGIS Online. Much of the data here comes from the Living Atlas of the World, which we will go into here in a moment. But just absolutely amazing, great tools for investigation. Okay, here's the Living Atlas of the World, and now we're just showing you just a few of the many, many layers for Italy and any other country around the world. Again, submitted by different organizations around the world, so be critical of the data, know where it came from, know how often it was updated, the scale it was created at, how often it's curated, and so on and so forth. So here we've got, I always like to look at natural hazards as well. We've got real-time earthquake data, again, in ArcGIS Online. You've got the data coming in from the U.S. Geological Survey, and you can see a couple weeks ago there were a few earthquakes in Greece and in Algeria. Fortunately, none in Italy at the time of the data here, but any earthquake is serious, so this is not a good situation. But one of the reasons why, of course, is because Italy is close to a plate boundary, and so I'm just adding the plate boundary data in here. We want to look at what's where, why is it there, and why should we care? We care about natural hazards because people and property are endangered and threatened by hazards, and as the world population increases, we are increasingly living in hazardous zones, and Italy is certainly no stranger to volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, and as well as rock slides, mudslides, snow slides, and other hazards. I also use Google Maps when I teach about countries because one of the things about Google Maps, of course, is the street views. So if I go to Italy and I click on the street view icon or tool, I can just drag and drop it over to certain parts of the country, and then I can look at, okay, here's a typical area in Italy. What does it look like? What kind of structures are there? What language is spoken? What side of the road do they drive on? Here's a mountainous area, as you can see, what kind of crops are grown, etc. Here's a coastal area in Italy. Beautiful terrain, isn't it? And what kind of tree species are growing? What kind of plant species are growing? What sorts of information about the population can you infer from these images as you navigate down different streets and sometimes trails as well in Street View. So this is a powerful tool for teaching about the physical and cultural environment. My colleagues at Esri Italia have a number of wonderful resources, so I always check the Esri distributor in different countries where I am teaching or teaching about, and in this case, Esri Italia. Wonderful resources there, maps, videos, training about how to use these tools effectively in your own classroom. Story Maps is the last tool that we're going to examine, and this is one on Venice. And as you probably are aware, Venice is threatened by sea level rise, and so this story map is all about that particular issue. So with a series of maps, graphics, images, videos, you can learn more about this situation, not only for Venice, but any coastal city really is threatened by the same situation. Another powerful thing about story maps is, and all these other maps that I'm showing today, is that you can actually have your students create them on various topics. Here's one on these beautiful historical monuments, obelisks that were constructed along the coastline in Italy and many other countries. This particular story map talks about those, and through a series of, again, photographs and some historical maps and building layouts and plans, you can explore these virtually and have a discussion with your students about why these things were erected and how they serve in the past and what they serve today. So again, videos embedded in your story maps, easy to do in the story maps tools, storymaps.arcgis.com. Let's look at the Wayback Imagery just a few more times. This is an area in Rome. You can see some construction of new apartment buildings, realignment of some of the roads in that area, and other things. Again, if you're a good map detective, here is another one, a construction of a marina on the west coast of Italy. So that's a fascinating one to explore as well, the Wayback Imagery. Let's close. I know that I promised that was going to be the last one, but just one more. Let's look at languages. Sorry, two more. Let's look at languages and how they're spoken around Europe and the presence of Italian and so on. As you can see here, and as you probably are aware, it actually extends beyond the boundary of Italy into, for example, Switzerland. And this is the final tool that I want to show here. There are many more tools, but this one is a powerful one to teach about landforms and elevation change. So let's measure, for example, across a piece of Sicily, and we just simply use the profile viewer and we draw whatever line we want, and then we get a 3D profile, and you can pan along it to see what the elevation is. Notice the connection to math here, so understand what units are being used and the vertical as well as the horizontal distances in each one of these profiles. Let's take a tour of the heel, the boot heel there, and you can see here that it looks very mountainous, but the elevation range is really only going from about 80 meters down to sea level, so not a whole lot, as you can probably confirm from your examination of the topographic terrain right there in that part of Italy. It's fairly flat right there. But we can change the scale, and we can actually go from, for example, the coast of France all the way down into central Italy and look at the influence of the Alps and so on, other landforms through there. So fascinating to be able to look at these tools and investigate our planet. Again, with interactive mapping tools mostly from Esri here. There's a couple of other tools as well, but use the most appropriate tool for the job, use the most appropriate tool in education, and use the geographic perspective through these interactive maps to foster spatial thinking, critical thinking, use of data, and investigation. Thanks, and grazie.